Good evening, everyone. I have 7 o'clock, and I'll call the meeting to order and ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Greg David,
Present.
Mr. Tyler Dean,
Here.
Miss Emily Hamburg,
Here.
Mr. Justin Smith,
Here.
and Mr. John Welch.
Present.
And you have a quorum, Mayor.
Thank you. This evening, we have Pastor Mark Posen here to lead us in prayer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let's pray. Father, thank you so much for just the beauty of the day. Father, for the sunshine. Father, we are so thankful for the rain, for the green that produces the refreshment that comes. Just reminds us of the refreshment that you provide. Father, we're thankful for the mayor, for these city council members, for the city staff, for the time that they give for the veterans of this community. We just pray that you would just bless them tonight. Father, for the discussions, for the decisions. Father, that you would just grant your wisdom. And Father, that all the things that are discussed and all the things that are decided would benefit those who call Bel Aire home. Father, we just do pray for all of the projects that are going on throughout the city. We just pray your continued protection, and we thank you for all that you do. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen. Thank you. Please join me in a pledge of allegiance to the American flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So this evening, speaking of the American flag, we have a proclamation I'm going to read. So it's National Flag Week is June 11th through the 17th. So citizens of Bel Aire, Kansas, greetings. Whereas the Second Continental Congress adopted the American flag on June 14, 1777, and whereas it is fitting and proper to officially recognize Old Glory as a symbol of hope, inspiration, and pride for the people of the United States and around the world, and whereas in order to commemorate the adoption of our flag on August 3, 1949, the Congress, by joint resolution, designated June 14 of each year as Flag Day and requested that the President issue an annual proclamation designating the week in which the June 14th occurs as National Flag Week, and call upon citizens of the United States to display the flag during that week. And now, therefore, I, Jim Benage, by power vested in me as mayor of the city of Bel Aire, and on behalf of the city council and citizens of Bel Aire, do hereby proclaim the week of June 11th through 17th, 2023, as National Flag Week in the city of Bel Aire, Kansas, and ask all citizens to affirm the ideals of our country by displaying the American flag at their homes. And I've signed that to this day, June 6th of 2023. Next item, before we move on, we have some outside counsel with us this evening concerning a legal matter. And as such, I would like to ask to jump to item 13A, executive session. And we need about 20 minutes.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
I'll make a motion to go into executive session for the sole purpose of discussing matters privileged in attorney-client relationship regarding a consultation with that outside counsel pursuant to KSA 754319B2. Invite the assistant city manager, interim city attorney, and the attorney from Triplet Wolf Garrettson. The executive session will be for a period of 20 minutes, and the open meeting will resume in city council chambers at 7:25 p.m.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Mr. Welch. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. For executive session for 20 minutes, and we will have that in the back room, and we will return in 20 minutes. Just a second. Okay, we held an executive session. I'll call the meeting back to order. No binding action was taken. Before we move on with the remainder of the agenda, does anyone have a motion to be considered?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Welch.
let me turn on my mic. Mr. Mayor,
Mr.
based
Welch.
on the advice of our legal counsel, I would move that zoning case number ZON-23-01, which was tentatively scheduled to be heard by this council on June 20th, be sent back to the Planning Commission for reconsideration once a new and complete application can be presented by the applicant, and that the item accordingly be removed from the June 20 City Council agenda for rescheduling after proper reconsideration by City's Planning Commission.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Welch, a second by Mr. David. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. This motion is carried. And it sends this case back to the Planning Commission. So move on to the next agenda item, determine agenda additions. Are there any other agenda additions to be considered tonight? Hearing none, we'll move on to consent agenda. So the consent agenda contains the minutes of May 16th City Council meeting, as well as two appointments. My reappointment of Gary O'Neill to the Public Building Commission for another 4-year term, and also my appointment of Mr. Edgar Salazar to the Planning Commission to fill the unexpired term of David Floyd. You may remember we just reappointed Mr. Floyd, but then after further consideration, he resigned. If approved, Mr. Salazar's term will be for 3 years, expiring on June 1st, 2026.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Welch.
I want to point out that the original minutes that went out were corrected. So if anybody read the minutes and didn't read the corrected version, about a day and a half later, they need to go back and reread them. And then I will make a motion to approve the consent agenda as listed and authorize the mayor to sign.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Welch, a second by Mr. Smith. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Discussion and approval of appropriations ordinance. For the appropriation ordinance, this reporting period includes 2 payroll periods and an amount paid to Image IT, which includes migration to GCC 365.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. David.
I'll make a motion to approve appropriations ordinance 23-10.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. David, second by Mr. Dean. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. We have 2 city requested appearances this evening. The first one is the Woodlawn construction update. Mr. Pat Garver is here. And I see Mr. Jay Engelmeyer is here as well. I understand you're here to speak about the same thing or just add moral support? Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, City Council, City Staff, thank you for your time. Just got a brief update here and then I'll stand for questions. As always, we start with a safety statement. This time we're going to talk about work zone safety. Just a couple bullet points here. Construction traffic, traveling in and out of the work zone, it can be a very dangerous situation for both the traveling public and the construction crews out there. Unintentionally, construction workers unintentionally stepping out into the traveling public and getting hit by a car. You would be surprised. It's alarming how often that actually happens. It's easy to lose your focus and you can step out and get hit there. Also, something that doesn't get talked about a whole lot is tools, shovels, that kind of thing hanging outside of the construction zone can be extremely dangerous. So, and as always, texting while driving is just a bad idea to begin with. but certainly in the construction zone, it's an awful idea. So the Bel Aire City website, social media, and public involvement, three tools that we use quite a bit to as an outreach to the public and to the business owners in the area with concerns, and we can get back to them and hear their concerns in a pretty quick time frame there. It's a great tool and we continue to use it. So we're at 72% complete on the project of 309 working days of the 390 plus 40 cleanup days on the project. So current activities, we're backfilling the utilities within the right of way. So the sanitary sewer and the water line that pass in the storm sewer, they're all in place within that right of way, and for the most part backfilled. So that's a big moment for this project. So I know you've all been waiting for that. So we're in the next coming days, we're going to divert the water to the new main passing underneath the railroad tracks. We continue to install storm sewer and tying in inlet drains for the utilities there. So along the main line, we're installing driveway entrances along Woodlawn courts, the fire station entrance, and Danbury, Danbury, and grading and aggregate base pavement sections within the railroad right of way. So that's going to be starting here pretty quick. Here's a picture. This is south of the railroad tracks looking north of the initial base course of the asphalt there. Here's a picture of the boring operation. Most of you didn't get to see this. I find this really interesting. I really love seeing these boring rigs do their job. It's pretty cool. That's why I've got two pictures of it here. So here's the shoring inside that trench box there, and you can see it's kind of hard to tell, but the boring equipment underneath there. So this is the sanitary sewer tie-in to the existing. They haven't cut in the line or anything like that, but doghouse manhole and connection there. And here's the backfill of the sanitary sewer trench here. So we're still in phase 2E. We're going to be in phase 2E until that connection between the north portion of the project and the south portion of the project there through the railroad. Once they connect that, then we'll be in phase 3. So good news is that phase 3 is going to be extremely short at this point. So they're getting out ahead on that phase 3, doing, as you can see, a lot of the pavement and entryways and utility operations for phase 3 as well. Upcoming activities, we've got aggregate base and asphalt in the right of way for the railroad. Entrances, we're going to continue working on those entrances west of Woodlawn. And then we should see the 45th Street signal arms coming in. I don't have a date for that yet. I talked to Pearson about that today, and they were unsure exactly when that was going to be coming in. But technically, that's that's a phase 4 item. But we should be seeing it before too long, I think. Additional notes is our right-of-way work is what the contractor is reporting to us is that they are on track for that right-of-way to be opened up by the end of the July. So, and then some things we have to expect for phase 4 and phase 5 is once again the signal for 45th Street and the pedestrian crossing, tie in some of the pavement and median items along the length of the project. And then phase 5, they're going to have some repair items for some of the new pavement that has gone in, and we've seen some ruts in some of the pavement that's already been placed. So they're going to have to fix up those deficiencies. And then once those are done, they're going to put in the final lift of pavement, start working on permanent pavement markings, and then doing more of the work along the right of way on the outside of the pavement section. So landscape, final grade, and roadside improvement, trees and grass and sod and whatnot. Okay. Traffic flow. So forgive me for my artwork here, but and I'm colorblind, so I had to make them as very different as I possibly could. So the bluer color here is the areas that are closed, and so that's going to be Danbury, the entryway for the fire station, and the railroad right of way in 44th Street. Then we've got Parrington and Quail Ridge that are open, and then Woodlawn Courts that are partially open. They have traffic in and out, but it's kind of skinny to get in there. So I think that's it. I stand for questions.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Herman? We're going to get that railroad crossing finished before the end of July, right?
That's what they're telling me. You know, that's weather permitting
Yeah.
and barring all other things. But I try to get a good date out of them, and I do what I can to give it to you. We'll see what happens in about a.
Well, they had a lot of
6
water in
weeks or
there,
so.
I noticed. So
What's
they
that?
had a lot of water in there, I noticed. That they got to pump out, I guess.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah, Mr. Dean.
I just wanted to make one comment. First, I think the end of July or by August 1st would fit the 60 days, the 60 working days they anticipated. So that's good if they can stay on track. The second thing is calculating the working days that are left to charge to 390 is approximately 80 days. So that tells me that they're expecting, based on the current schedule, to be done by August 1st. That's 4 full months left for the work. Is that about kind of what you're seeing?
That's what I've heard from Pearson as well.
Okay.
Is I believe at the meeting today they said September 30th.
Yep.
Is
Okay.
where they have it projected.
Thank
So,
you. I just wanted to clarify that for the public. Thanks.
Great, thank you. All right. Any other questions or comments for Mr. Herman?
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Hamburg?
just for the people at home, when that railroad crossing gets open at the end of July or as close to that date as possible, that means we're going to have free flowing traffic north and south, or what should they expect from 37th to 45th?
It'll have north and southbound traffic through the intersection. So
Very good.
it'll be much like what we have now, but you'll be able to pass all the way through. So
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Good.
is that it?
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate the presentation, and we'll see you again next month, I assume, right?
Yep.
Great. Next, we have Mr. Brian Meyer from Burns and McDonald to present some information for us.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. Appreciate the opportunity to be here today. It seems like there's been a lot going on over the last few months, and this project has has a long history and it has evolved significantly over that period of time. So just a little bit of history. And if we go clear back to and I know you can't read these, but just as markers, the original consent order came in back in November of last year. So, and in that time period, there was the audits were going on, and there was a lot of information being gathered to think about how to move forward appropriately. So then in May, a letter was sent to KDHE to talk about, the response to the consent order. And it really looked at extending the time period to do proper planning for an expansion plan. Because that's really what the consent order was asking for originally, was what is the plan for expansion of the facility? So this was requested, and let's try this. Doesn't seem to want to do. Trying them both. Okay.
There you go.
So, and we got a favorable response from KDHE. They were okay with an extension because they recognized the challenges in the planning process. So many things were up in the air that were going to be instrumental in making defensible decisions. So they extended the time to submit a plan. And they really put 2 dates into that letter that are of significance. One was October 31st to have a full plan for expansion. How are you going to use the plant? How the plant was going to be used by both Bel Aire and Park City at that point in time. The other one, and the one we're talking a little bit more about tonight, is the June 30th, because they also wanted to know, okay, what are you going to do in the interim? In the letter that was sent from CCUA, it talked about a number of things. It talked about load management, and the things you could do in the pretreatment program, looking at I&I, looking at for continued reuse opportunities, some of those things that can be done and programs that can be developed to help the plant. Then it also talked about rehabilitation projects, what can be done to improve compliance and treatment performance. So that was in there as well. So we took a look at what our original evaluation was in the audit, and this really was very compatible with that work. I mean, but it really came down to those last couple of items. How are the processes performing? What can be done to improve process performance, and opportunities to think about the future in doing that? And then the condition assessment. We knew that we had certain elements of the plant that are in pretty desperate need of some rehab or replacement activities. And we'll look at a couple pictures along those lines here in a little bit. And this is something we talked about, throughout the project, is balancing cost and risk. And that's why this was really about this effort, and kind of the communication with KDHE was the risk associated with moving too fast and the cost implications of that. Building something that's not the right size, not going to perform adequately, whether it's undersized or oversized, either way, it could be a risk. So that really shifted to, okay, what do we want to do? Try to take those things that can improve the performance, but be foundational to any direction you decide to go in the future, when you understand how that plant is to be used, how Bel Aire needs to use that plant. So that was one of the key criteria, was being foundational, and that it did improve the process performance as well. And then that process combined is going to give the time to evaluate those future needs and develop that plan, and frankly, implement that plan, because that's the one thing that wasn't included, was the implementation period. So that's something I think you have some opportunity to lay out once you establish how you want it to be used. What's the timeline for implementing those improvements or doing that construction? So I wanted to point this out. This is just some of the pictures you've seen before, but it kind of illustrates some of the condition assessment components of it that we talked about, and the things that need to be either repaired or replaced. And one of the things we'll talk about here shortly is some of those could possibly be done in a more of a maintenance manner versus capital projects. So that's something that the CCUA board could decide. depending on the size of the project, the scope of the project, how formal you want to get, and what's to your the best cost advantage to CCUA and the partner cities. Now, this is another one that's really hard to read, but it's really important. And you'll hate the one that's right after this one because it's even harder to read, but it's the message that it presents. This is a scoring card where we took scoring criteria, and we'll show you, it really has 3 pieces in scoring criteria to prioritize the projects. Yeah, and it goes through 3 different levels, compliance, performance, longevity, and you put those together and you rank the projects. And in this case, the top ranked project was the replacement of the SBR, the one that would be parallel to the existing SBR3. And that was because of the performance aspects that it delivers, the redundancy. So it came to the top. I want to put a caveat in here. This is an evaluation that we did internally at Burns Mac with Sarah and Keith and myself. This would have to be opened up to more stakeholders that would have potentially different opinions. This might turn out differently. But when we did it, that one rose to the top because of the effect it has on performance. Below it, in a couple, you see the UV replacement. I think it rose fairly high to the top too because of the safety aspects of it. It's a difficult to operate and not very safe condition right now. But it'll also offer some benefits going forward with process, ensuring that you can get the disinfection that's needed. So that process went through it and really brought 4, 5, 6 projects to the top that could be selected for an interim project that would satisfy KDHE because of the things that you put in the letter that said you were trying to do: operational improvements, safety improvements, reliability, and compliance. So there's the scoring card, which you can't read, but it's a fairly sophisticated but simple. As you start, it forces you to go through it and rank under each criteria of the project as to what it does. So it's one common method. There's a lot of other ways to figure out which are the most important projects to do, but this is one we used, and it's one that's commonly used in the industry. Thinking back to the other, when they were ranked, the one thing that you probably noticed if you could read it is that the SBR was probably the most expensive item in those top 5 because you're adding a big structure to do that. So that was one of the more expensive. In the numbers that we put on those, we provided those to the city. So you should have copies of those you can see at any time. Those are conservative estimates. So I think that one had about a $4.5 million number attached to it. I think that's a conservative estimate. I think if you went out on the market, you'd find something that you'd have a better price. So, but we wanted to be conservative on that. This is a diagram of what we had proposed after our audit. And you can see that there is no sister SBR to SBR3 because we felt like you needed to have 4. And it was going to be more cost effective to go out and do a quadplex by itself than try to add 1 sister and 3 out there. So that was why this looks. Otherwise, the thing I wanted to point out on this one too is that we've talked about before, there's a lot of overlap with the Wilson report. I mean, a lot of the things that they recommended were sound and were going to serve well as you move forward with the project. It's just the timing and extent of that project that needed to be considered. Then I wanted to contrast that with their proposal where they were just going to add 3 versus the 4 SBRs. One of the biggest differences right there. And they did have a second unit or a sister unit to SBR3. So in this particular case, when we're looking at the rehabilitation project and you're just looking at process improvements, that's the one we would say, if you're going to do just one, you build that one. Then when you determine the size of the expansion, you would go out and you would build either the 3 or 4, determining what your overall need would be in the expansion process. And that would be a more simplistic expansion. So a lot of similarities. The next steps really in this, when you've seen this before, but it's kind of the same things you would consider as you move forward with the next phase in how do you do this? How do you do this interim project? You look for the contractor's qualifications, making sure somebody's going to have a plan to maintain the plant operations while you're doing it. And it gets a little harder when you're doing that sister SBR. Try to avoid the sole sourcing of equipment, which we had identified as one particular concern. As the project is scaled down, maybe not as much, just have to look at that. And then just division of responsibility. Who's going to be responsible for what? Just things you'll want to look at for due diligence on any project as you move it forward. And then, of course, the schedule. And that will have to be part of the response to KDHE on June 30th is what's the plan for doing it? What's going to be done? When's it going to start? When's it going to finish? And those are going to be the general things that they're going to expect to see, I believe. Wanted to go from there to talk briefly about the composite sampler. This is the application that was submitted to WEF for that composite sampler. And the city was approved. The composite sampler was delivered, and it's ready to be installed. And actually, we can go to the map that shows where it's going to be. The recommendation is that it be installed at the 53rd Street pump station. That's the midpoint.
Is that the one down there near 135?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
And it really captures the majority of the waste. Ian might know whether it's all of it at that point, but it's the best location available to get the information you need to evaluate the contributions of Bel Aire versus Park City to CCUA. And we were talking beforehand, it's probably a fairly simple installation, and we're going to set up a time to get out there and finalize the plans for that installation, probably within the next week. The other elements that need to be identified is the sampling protocol. Right now, the initial plan is to mirror what's being done at CCUA at the plant, so that you get the same data and you can evaluate. As you move through time, chances are you're going to want to reduce that sampling. As you start to understand the data, you can get data overload to some extent, so you would probably reduce that frequency to monthly, but still take it at the same time that you do at the plant, so you can get accurate numbers on contributions of load to CCUA. So that's a project that I think I would be disappointed if we don't get a plan and probably get it in the ground within the next month, so we can start to collect that data. So, and with that, I'd be willing to take any questions that you might have.
No questions for Mr. Mayor? We'll appreciate the information and the update, and we look forward to seeing what we can get accomplished there. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is the citizens' concerns, and I have no cards for citizen concerns, but if there are citizens that would like to speak to council, this is an opportunity to do so. And seeing none, I'll move on to the next item. So those council member reports. So we'll start with Mr. Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a few items to cover. So obviously, everybody probably heard in the news last week the opening of the new North Junction flyover bridge connecting I-135 and 235. Obviously, a major improvement for our city and our region. There were many speakers at the press conference. I'm only going to highlight two. Pete Meitzner, our Sedgwick County Commissioner, spoke and emphasized the regional focus of the project and how many partnerships were involved, and emphasized infrastructure priorities and how big of an impact that transportation has on the economy. And then the interim KDOT Secretary, Calvin Reed, made specific comments as well about the partnerships that formed and his long history with the project, having done some of the design back before his KDOT days. And he specifically was quoted as mentioning the Integra project and how big of an impact infrastructure projects play in supporting major projects of that type, which is exciting to hear because I know there'll be considerable efforts to continue to advocate for infrastructure improvements along K254 as we move forward with that and other major projects in our community. So I just wanted to say thank you to those folks that spoke and attended, and congratulations on opening that project. Also wanted to remind everybody that tomorrow is the monthly Bel Aire Chamber meeting. It's a lunch that usually begins around 11:30 with networking, and then a meeting and or tour follows. Tomorrow, the tour will be of the Goodwill Training Facility on North Webb Road. So looking forward to seeing that. Another little update, Bel Aire Rec Center obviously has kicked off the summer camp. They have a full bunch, dropped off our daughters a couple mornings, and they have a full bunch and new staff. So welcome the new staff. And also thanks to all the volunteers, the staff, and then also just mentioned baseball kicking off. It's been a wet start, but thanks to the rec staff that's helped make that happen, the volunteers and the families for participating. And then finally, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to say a few weeks ago, I had the privilege to attend the stop by the Sedgwick County election office to file for a run for city council and continue the work that I've done representing the citizens of our city. I've enjoyed my time serving along with fellow council members. I look forward to the process of campaigning and wish other candidates running at the local and state level all the best during their primary and general elections. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Very good. Thank you. Mr. David.
Mr. Mayor, I also attended the CCUA meeting on May 25th, where we did discuss the consent order. And once again, the monthly report was the influent was out of compliance, but the effluent was compliant again. So that's good news. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only other item that I'll just call out from the CCUA meeting on the 25th, in addition to the consent orders, we did have a considerable amount of discussion on replacing the SCADA system. An RFP had gone out for SCADA system requests, and the TAC reviewed that, and their recommendation was to move forward with the provider that currently offers the SCADA system for the plant. Because that was their recommendation, it occurred to me that the new hardware that they put in will be compatible with the existing hardware, and it wouldn't necessarily be completely necessary to replace the entire system all at once, which is over a $400,000 expense that isn't budgeted for this year, and asked that we evaluate the possibility of replacing the components of SCADA that are most in need of replacement this year, and doing that as a phased project. That was not well received by half of the CCUA board members, and we ended up not moving forward with anything from a SCADA replacement perspective. So that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Welch.
I have no report.
Ms. Hamburg.
Thank you, Mayor. I served as an alternate in Mayor's absence at the May 25th CCUA meeting. One thing I would note is we, half of the board members, we weren't able to come to consensus about the response, but good news is that we've moved up the meeting due to some conflicts to next week. So it's going to be June 15th. And I look forward to coming up with a response, hopefully to the KDHE by that June 30th deadline, because it's not in CCUA or any of its customers' interest to not meet that deadline. So thank you, Mayor.
Very good. Thank you. So I'll move on to the mayor's report. So congratulations to Mr. Parker Costley, who is a winner of the South Central region of My City, My Home essay contest, sponsored annually by the League of Kansas Municipalities. This essay contest is only open to 7th graders every year. There are 5 regional winners around the state and 1 overall winner. Mr. Parker finished his 7th grade at Resurrection Catholic School here in Bel Aire. It's always great to see Bel Aire students get such statewide recognition. So on Wednesday, May 31st, I attended the ribbon cutting flyover that Mr. Dean had talked about at the North Junction. So that was a great thing. It's a $13 million project, just the bridge alone. So it tells you how much this stuff cost. They noted that 100,000 vehicles per day go through that interchange, and almost 10,000 of those are trucks. So I just honor of being part part of the first and hopefully only traffic congestion on that flyover as we parked on the flyover for the ribbon cutting. And some 20 to 30 cars left that ribbon cutting all at once going over the flyover. So many Bel Aire residents are affected by this improvement. It's a great thing. On Saturday, June 3rd, I was given the honor to attend the change of command ceremony at the McConnell Air Force Base. I was allowed to take my grandson Remy to this event. This was for the command of the Reserve 4th Air Force 931st Refueling Wing. The new colonel is in charge of the 931st is Cynthia A. Welch. And to my knowledge, she has no relationship to Councilmember Welch. Later this week, there will be a ceremony of change of command for the 18th Air Force 22nd Refueling Wing. And this next change of command is for the commanding officer of the McConnell Air Force Base. So that will happen this Friday. So I'll now ask our interim city attorney if she has a report.
Thank you, Mayor. I do not have anything to report. This is my last meeting as interim city attorney, so I just wanted to thank everyone for your time, and working with you has been a pleasure, and I appreciate it. And I'll continue to consult with you on these other outside matters that we are all working together on. So
Well, we appreciate you stepping up and helping us out. So that's very great. Thank you. Move on to city manager report or assistant city manager report.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jennifer stole my thunder there. I was going to say thank you very much for all the staff. She's done a great job. And as you know, our full-time city attorney starts on Monday. If you ever wondered how efficient and effective we are, I'm one half of the desk move tomorrow. So if you want to, I'll be carrying the desk upstairs for her. The one thing we do have coming up on Tuesday, June 27th, we're in the middle of a master plan for parks and recreation. They're going to be on site, I believe, at some of the baseball games from 5:30 to 7:30 at the rec center to get some public input on some of their conceptual ideas. There'll be insert and a lot of other ways we're going to notify the public to come, but this is the first I know of it that they're going to be out asking the public for their input as well, just direct input. So that's Tuesday, June 27th at the rec center. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to ordinance resolutions and final actions. And the first item on the agenda here is solid waste fee proposed increase. So on May 16th, the city council approved a request from Waste Connections for 2% increase in solid waste and the recycling fees charged to the city per Waste Connection contract. The city handles all administrative tasks involved in managing the program, which encompasses activities such as setting up accounts, managing move-ins and move-outs, addressing customer inquiries. Additionally, we acknowledge the impact of trash trucks on local streets, and as a result, allocate $100,000 for street maintenance purposes each year. So the resolution tonight proposes a 2% increase in the current fees for trash and recycling services charged to customers. This adjustment is aimed at ensuring the sustainability and effectiveness of waste management operations, while also accounting for the cost associated with providing these services to the community. And I think Mr. Henry has some things he would like to say.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My first slide. No, the other. It's okay. I think you explained it pretty well. The city receives a rate from Waste Connections, and then we charge a rate. Of course, we have to do all the administrative work that involves requesting new services, change of services, answering all the questions, as well as the trash trucks that run over our streets. The last 7 years or so, we've had a solid waste fund. We're about ready to talk about the budget. The way we usually do it, and it's displayed up on the screen. The old rate is what Waste Connection charges. This is what we charge. The difference kind of help funds the administrative transfer and the street transfer, which leaves about, and this is an estimate because our number of customers goes up, estimated about $27,000. That's kind of our buffer zone, so to make sure we take care of our streets and our admin cost. That admin cost hasn't changed in 7 years. I know inflation's hit us, but I just always kept it around $35,000. With the new rates on the second what it would do is bring it down to about $17,000. So your decision tonight is, do we increase our rates the same as Waste Connections passed on to us, or do we maybe not do it this year and wait till next year? I will caution, if you keep doing that every year, what's going to happen is we're end up charging less than Waste Connection charges us for the work that we do. So that's a real policy discussion for you guys tonight, and I'll stand for questions.
Any questions for Mr. Henry?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Welch?
I make a motion to accept a resolution establishing solid waste utility and curbside recycle system fees within the corporate limits of the city of Bel Aire, Kansas, and authorize the mayor to sign.
I'll second.
I have a motion for Mr. Welch and a second for Mr. Smith. Any additional discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith?
I was just going to comment, I did vote against raising or approving the increase with Waste Connections because I didn't think we needed to do that. But since y'all approved that, I do think it makes sense that that increase needs to actually be applied to the trash bills. So that's why I'll support this.
Okay, very good.
And Mr. Mayor, I was the other vote against it, and I will just say ditto to Justin's comments. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries 5-0. So item B is a request for additional driveway location along Woodlawn. So the city's usual procedure for permitting driveways requires the applicant to submit detailed building plans, including details of structure, before the city issues a permit. Appropriate access, width, and placement of driveways is evaluated by city staff based on building plans before the permit is issued. Mr. King, who owns the empty lots south of Dollar General and north of Danbury, Mr. King is requesting we add 2 driveway approaches along his property on Woodlawn as part of the Woodlawn project. As I understand this, Mr. King is not provided any plans for a building to be constructed and has no immediate plans for development of this property. And I believe Ann Stevens and Mr. King are here to answer any questions. Are you Mr. King? Yeah. So if you have any questions for Mr. King or Ann Stevens,
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
is this something that's been reviewed by Planning Commission? Does this go through the Planning Commission process, this type of request?
I think that might be a question for Ann to answer.
Yes,
The-
my name is Bill King. My farm's at 3663 Southwest Prairie Creek Road, south of Benton. I don't know, I met with 3 members of the city staff and we went over all of this, and it was my impression that they were in agreement. The reason for that and the reason for trying to get the driveways in prior to having a building developed there is it's to promote, to expedite the development of the property and help me control the use of the property itself. We initially went in with, we're way back with, a couple of decades ago when we started this thing, and I've been waiting on Woodlawn to be improved since then. So we had 5 driveways. We used one for Dollar General, and then I decided it would be better to just have 2 driveways and have each lot split the use of the driveways. I don't know whether you have pictures of that or not, but I've given the driveways as drawn up by Boffman to the staff, and I really didn't prepare to speak tonight, so I didn't have any notes. But the reason for the driveways prior to coming in with a building plan is to promote the development of the ground, to try to get something going there. I wanted to have the driveways put in as a part of the Woodlawn project, but that hadn't quite worked out. So here I am trying to get it done before the project's completed. You all are aware, of course, of the use of the lots there for the construction, roadway construction. Been a little over 2 years. First, it was Donlinger, and now it's Pearson, I guess. The agreement with them initially was that they were going to put in their construction trailer on lot 1. As you very well are aware now, that's proceeded to take up all of the lots with the construction materials. I've allowed that because I've been waiting for, as I said, a couple of decades for Woodlawn to be improved, and I didn't want to do anything to cause that to slow down or to get past the construction days, which you were pointing out earlier. I've got to believe that my allowing that to be used that way has been a great help for Bel Aire and certainly for the contractors. Now, I haven't been paid anything for that. I get nothing for the use of the property, simply trying to expedite Woodlawn being finished. But now what I'd like to do, and I think it's something that the city can help me with, helping the development, is approve me getting the driveways in there so that I can promote the development itself. I don't think it's taken anything away from the control, the city's control. They'll still approve whatever the buildings that are going to be proposed to be there. So other than that, I hope, I went into more detail with all of it with the staff, and as I really didn't prepare to speak because I thought the staff probably had handled that, but.
Well, they have given us quite a bit of information, but not always from your
Well, I
perspective. So I appreciate your giving
Yeah.
your perspective here. So we had a question from one of the council members. Are you able to answer that question, Ann? Okay, thank you.
The PUD, the planned unit development for this property, does allow for driveways, entrances at the discretion of the staff. It does not, it's already been approved. It does not need to go back to planning commission for that approval of the specific locations.
Okay. I was just curious, Woodlawn is now a lot different than it was when I was thinking about this. Seems like having driveways along that main road, adding more that close to the intersection, which is going to have a stoplight, could be tricky. And I was just wondering, were any options considered, like a frontage road from Danbury? I know that's something that they're looking at in other places to limit traffic onto the major roads, and what all kind of option studies had been done around that, which planning commission would typically look at, I think. And that's kind of why I was curious if they had an analysis on it.
Correct. That was an option that was reviewed actually back in 2006 when this was replatted. So that was considered by planning commission. What Bill is considering now with the one access for 2 lots, that's actually not a bad idea. It gives him the most usable space on the lot. I'm not opposed to the location of the driveways. I'm concerned about the timing. Without specific building plans, without knowing the elevation of the building, I'm concerned that any driveway that does get installed is not going to be at the correct elevation. As far as the city goes, if we had done this during the initial phases of the project, we would have made a curb cut in the location of the driveways, and then it would have been up to Mr. King to put the driveway in from there because it is not existing. We did replace the one existing driveway into the northernmost lot, or the fireworks, where the fireworks has typically been. We did replace that as part of the project, but these additional driveways were not accounted for.
So is the requested action for the council to approve the installation, but that's paid for by Mr. King, or is the requested action that the city approve and install the driveways?
From my perspective, it would be to approve the location of the driveways, but I'll let Mr. King speak to the rest of the request.
Yes, to answer that, I had hoped that they would be included in the project itself. we developed the driveway plans with Boffman and gave them to the city some time ago, just about the time the project started. And I had hoped it would be included in the project. If it comes down to where I've got to do it, then I've got to do it. You know, I'm not unaccustomed to cities not following through on what I believed, you know, so it'll be up to you guys, you know. I mean, I just want to get it done so I can, you know, how you all developed your industrial park, you put in some streets, you put in some utilities, you prepared for the people that you wanted to put in there. Well, I want to prepare for the people that I want to put in there. To get back to where you were talking, like an access road or something, that's the reason for the reduction in the number of driveways to share in the lots. Have a cross easement between the lots so that they can move between the lots without going out on the Woodlawn. That's something I do typically wherever I develop something, so.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Dean.
And can you answer the question about the timing of, and your worry with putting a driveway in before we know what kind of building's going in, and what your opinion as an engineer for the city is of that? And just kind of go into that a little bit more for the public to understand.
Sure. So when building plans are submitted, you have the engineer, the architect go and look at the site plan, the site, see what the elevations are. You look at the drainage, see where things are going. You come up with an elevation for the building pad itself. That would be basically your ground floor when you're walking into the building. And then from once that point is set, then you do all your site work. You do your parking lots, you do your drive entrances, you do all the connections, the storm sewer, make sure everything flows away from the building and get that connection to the street. So from my perspective, having this backwards is a little concerning. It can be done if the council wishes. I'm not 100% opposed to it, but realize that things may change in the future. Mr. King, if he chooses to move ahead with this, that's great. And we can help him, work with him to get the site installed. But once we come down to actually putting in the building, things may change and this entrance may need to get removed or it may need to get modified. If somebody wants to go and buy the whole lot or develop the whole lot, I'm just kind of conceptualizing here. Things may change on those entrances, on those accesses. I understand where Mr. King is coming from, but looking from a kind of a forward view as far as the development, I'd rather not have the entrances off of Woodlawn if there's, and I understand getting ready for the folks coming in, but we've got the entrances there. People are going to park on them and potentially use the property for other uses, which would be up to Mr. King to police. Just kind of trying to look at all aspects of it, but it's really from the building site. You generally start with the building site. I have done site development work. I've never gone kind of this route, but there's always multiple ways to go up to a mountain.
Thanks, Ann. One thing I was going to mention is there's a bank going in. This is actually in Wichita. It's south of the tracks. A bank is going in, and I remember when they broke ground on that, and obviously that wasn't even on the radar when the Woodlawn project was being done. Sidewalk was literally just installed, and it's wasted.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They covered it up with dirt. They'll probably put a new sidewalk at their cost.
Correct.
But one of the things I'm concerned with is approving this and then seeing that kind of thing happen. And so for that reason, I'm not going to support putting this in with city funds. I think if the developer wants to take a risk, I would be in support of him taking the risk, but I'm not in favor of the city taking that risk to put in driveways that essentially could be removed or relocated. So that's all I had. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Smith.
Along those same lines, if we approve the location and then the developer installs these driveways and then the elevation is wrong and they have to be corrected, that's also at the developer's expense at that point and not the city's expense?
That would be correct.
Okay. Then I think that's what I plan to support as well. That gives the flexibility for you to do what you would like to do without the possibility of, kind of tax dollars being wasted because this isn't done in the order that is typical.
support allowing you to put in the driveways. I do not want Pearson doing this until they finish the rest of the project.
Sorry.
I don't want Pearson doing this until they finish the rest of the project. They will use this as an excuse to delay something else. If you want to pay for it, or even negotiate with Pearson to pay for it, since they're using your lot without compensation, maybe you can do that, but I don't think the city should pay for it. We don't pay for anybody else's driveways. And I don't know what that means as way of a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
I'll make a motion to approve the developer's requested location for 2 driveways into Bel Aire Second Edition per the site plan dated September 2020 by Baughman Company in accordance with all city specifications and conditioned upon the approval of the required permits from the zoning administrator and the installation to be done at the developer's expense.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Mr. Dean. Any additional discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr.
I
David?
I totally misunderstood that then. I thought we were saying since the site plan wasn't developed yet, it would almost be imprudent to go ahead and start those at this time. And there wouldn't be any savings because the curbs are already poured anyway. But I must have missed something in that discussion.
No, I think you're right. It's really not that prudent to put it in right now because we don't know about the building, but if he wants to take the risk, it's his money.
I think you summed it up.
Yeah. Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your attention.
We're on to item C, Woodlawn change order number 16. So following installation of storm sewer line on the southeast side of 45th at Woodlawn, it was discovered that the slope between the sidewalk and the open ditch are too steep. The steep slopes would make it difficult to mow and could be dangerous to sidewalk users. So MKEC and city staff decided the best solution is to extend the drainage pipe and connect it to the pipe underneath St. James. This work will remove the safety and maintenance concerns regarding the slope. The cost of the change order is $11,327.75. Additional costs associated with the work will be included in the bonds and paid with general funds. This change order will increase the total annual debt service payments by $900. So staff recommends council approve this change order. And so I do have 2 questions. Possibly Ann Stevens can answer. And those are, is the plan to complete the sidewalk as it already started from St. James to Woodlawn? Is it, the plan is to complete that sidewalk?
That
Because I know
is-
it's not complete right now.
Yes, that is
Okay.
correct. There will be a continuous sidewalk from St. James to the intersection at 45th and Woodlawn.
Okay, very good. And then what is the plan to prevent erosion along that slope? Because it's eroding right now. And both sides of St. James are eroding.
Correct. So as far as the west side of St. James, once we have the curb and gutter will continue from where it stops right now, and it will continue around the curb to meet up with the curb and gutter on St. James. So that will lift up that area about 6 inches. And then so that will be able to be flat graded from that top of that curb and gutter to the sidewalk. Jay looked at the grading today, and that'll be about a 6-to-1 slope, which is fairly mild in terms of mowability. 4-to-1 is ideal for mowability. I mean, always gentler the better, but a 3-to-1 is kind of your limit as to what is generally considered mowable. Not ideal. We'd rather have the 4-to-1. So at a 6-to-1 slope, that would be 6 feet across, 1 feet up. Then that is a fairly good slope, or fairly gentle slope, all things considered. And so it should be reasonable. The contractor will come in after they do all their grading and get all the improvements in. They will come back and temporarily seed it until it's ready for permanent seeding. So until it's permanent seeded, that will be maintained kind of as similar other areas. If there's any erosion, they will come back and regrade, so it will be ready for permanent seating.
Okay.
Kind of stumbling a little bit,
All
but
right,
hopefully
well,
you
very
get the
good. I'm glad
gist.
you got a plan. Now, what, is there a plan for the east side of St. James? Because that needs some help too. I know that they're not done with the project. I get that, but
Correct.
what's the plan
And
there?
there is no specific plan yet. I believe that can be taken care of with just a little bit of regrading and possibly some additional rock. Mr. Herman is here with Garver as part of the construction inspection firm on that project. He is obviously listening to this conversation. That will be something of note prior to doing our final walkthrough of the Woodlawn project. So we will make sure that it is addressed prior to finally accepting that project.
Very good. Thank you. 6-to-1 slope. If you're the guy pushing the mower, that's not fun, but okay.
It's better than a 3-to-1 or a 4-to-1.
Okay. Very good.
Where will this go on the timeline?
This should not affect this will be kind of an extra work item. Once Donlinger gets through with the critical items that they're working on right now, they will go over to this side, to this storm sewer. So this will get installed kind of in a progression, but it will not change the controlling item of work with Pearson. It will not change. There was no additional days requested for this change order, so it should not affect the overall schedule. It will be kind of basically fill-in work.
Okay, that was my second question. If we were going to have more days, we already get more days than we know what to do with.
Any other questions or discussion?
I will make a motion to approve the change order request from Pearson Construction in the amount of $11,327.75 for the extension of the 18-inch storm sewer from east of Woodlawn to St. James along 45th Street and authorize the mayor to sign all related documents.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Welch and a second by Mr. David.
Yes.
Any additional discussions or questions? Hearing none, I'll take a vote, call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries 5-0. Moving on to item D, the signatures on city bank accounts. So the city owns and leases previous city hall to Believer Bible Church. I'm not sure I know where the location of this is. I need to find out. So the bank account at Southwest National Bank holds the lease payments, which is the sole purpose of the account. Authorized signers on the account are the city manager Lasher and previous mayor, previous finance director, and previous treasurer. The resolution updates signers for the account to align with current officials and city staff in these positions. So Ted, Mr. Henry has some comments. I asked him some questions over the last couple of days about this, and I think he may have some comments about that.
Yeah, it's been the hot button issue, I guess, of the agenda, which is interesting because it's more of an administrative function for, of course, the taxpayers doesn't want anybody touching their money. So we pass resolutions to decide who gets access to accounts. That's what this has before you. I just celebrated my 7th year at Bel Aire. This comes up about every 7 years because if you get a bank account over $250,000, the state government or our state government says every security the city has needs to be backed by the FDIC insurance. So I have to transfer money back to our main account. In order to do that, I need access. So this account, if you can imagine, is more or less an escrow account. Back in 2004, we moved into this building. We sold lease purchase agreement with the Believer Bible. And there's a contract that's about 35 pages long that dictates all these movements. What it is basically an escrow account is what best I can tell you. Once I have access to it, I'll see about maybe if we can close it and just make the payment into our main account. That would be a lot smoother, but I don't have access, and I'd probably want to talk to some people before I made that determination. So right now, before you have a resolution that names me as well as the mayor. Ty's on it, but I can't act as Ty, and I don't want to bother him about something like this. So this is what this does before you tonight, and I can report back what I find in the next 3 to 4 months of investigating this minor issue.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
I noticed that the resolution has me signing the resolution instead of the mayor. What's the purpose
So
of
that's the other thing. The mayor's actually can't grant himself access, so we have the council president sign these types of documents. Again, a lot of it's security around public funds.
It's all right.
And the mayor asked something, wasn't sure where the location of this was. This is at 45th and Edgemore, if I'm correct.
That makes sense.
The old city hall at 45th. Yeah, it used to be a church, then it was city hall, then now it's a church again.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. David.
I'll make a motion to accept the resolution to designate authorized signers for the city bank account at Southwest National Bank and authorize the council president and designate city staff to sign.
Second.
Motion by Mr. David, second by Ms. Hamburg. Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries 5-0. Next item we have on the agenda is another executive session, and I would like to ask for 20 minutes, but if we want to take a break before that, I'm certainly entertaining a motion to take a break.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
make a motion for a 5-minute recess.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Mr. Smith and second by Mr. Welch for a 5-minute recess. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Too bad. We're in 5-minute recess. The motion carried 5-0, by the way.
So not exactly sure what it is.
So we'll call the meeting back to order from recess. And next item is executive session, item B. And I think we could probably do that in here. If somebody will make a motion and we close the doors and proceed.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Hamburg.
I make a motion to go into executive session for the sole purpose of discussing the subject of attorney-client privilege, of attorney-client consultation regarding contractual obligations pursuant to KSA 75-4319, exception for attorney-client privilege. Invite the city assistant city manager, interim city attorney, and Brian Meir. The meeting will be for a period of 20 minutes, and the open meeting will resume in city council chambers at 9 p.m.
I'll second.
Motion by Ms. Hamburg, second by Ms. Greg. David, any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We're in executive session for 20 minutes. Okay, we held an executive session. No binding action was taken. I'm going to call the meeting back to order and entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
I'll make a motion to extend the executive session for an additional 10 minutes with the open meeting resuming at 9:12 PM in City Council chambers.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Smith, a second by Mr. Mr. David, yes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All, sounds like it passed by 5-0. So we're back in executive session. We'll call the meeting back to order. We held an executive session with no binding action taken, and we'll move on to item C on the executive session.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to go into executive session for the sole purpose of discussing the subject of matters of non-elected personnel, contracted employees pursuant to KSA 75-4319, exception for the same. The meeting will be for a period of 10 minutes and the open meeting will resume in council chambers at 9:30.
Second.
I got two, so I'll take Ms. Hamburg. I have a motion by Mr. Welch and a second by Ms. Hamburg. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries 5-0. Okay, we held an executive session. I'm going to call the meeting back to order. No binding action was taken. And we'll move on to item 14, discussion and future issues. So next Tuesday is June 13th. We will hold our monthly workshop to discuss the 2024 budget. I want to make sure everybody's available for 6:30, if that's workable for everybody. And if that's okay, then that's great. I don't know if there are any other topics we need to put on that agenda for the workshop, but I
Mr.
do
Mayor.
have another issue I need to talk about, but let's talk about the workshop first.
Oh, I was going to ask about a different issue.
Yeah, let's talk about the workshop first. Anything else on the workshop?
Workshop. I'll try to get you as much information as I can. I'm really waiting on the county will publish their estimates, and that's probably the most important part we want to talk about. So I don't want to give you a bunch of information that could change. So I'll do what I can to get you something in advance, but really we're kind of a month ahead with them pushing back the approval date for the budget. So I don't see, we can't have a really informed discussion next Tuesday, about the general fund. So
Well,
that's
how-
why I'm waiting if you don't see anything.
How much time do you think you're going to need? Is
Yeah.
it a 30-minute talk or a 3-hour talk?
I wrote something to myself that, and as much as I love the Woodlawn updates, some of those traffic maps are really confusing. So I'm gonna really try not to provide a traffic map. I'm gonna try to hit the high points for you guys, and maybe not get down so detail. We'll have the detail as support, but I'll try to keep it within an hour or so, if that sounds good.
Okay,
very good.
if you were going to go to 2 hours, I'd say that was more than enough for one workshop. Didn't
Okay,
need any other issues.
all right. So do we have other issues we want to throw on there, or if we don't, we'll go on to something else here? And I'm not hearing anybody just jump up. So the July 4th City Council meeting is obviously Independence Day. So I don't think we want to meet that day. If we do, we probably have a whole lot of people, anti-firework people here. But regardless, we need to determine another date. There are some calendar things that have to be published and stuff. So we need to come up with another date. 5th works for me. 6th works for me. If that works for everybody, or whatever you want to throw out there, I'm entertained as well.
What about the 3rd?
3rd is Monday.
I have the feeling we're going to need to have a meeting that week.
I am okay for the 3rd, but I don't know. Some people might want to be out of town. I don't know. What's everybody else think?
Yeah, I mean, third does not sound.
Doesn't sound great.
It
because
doesn't
it's
sound
on
good for
holiday.
any staff.
That's true.
I'm having trouble finding staff that's going to work that day. So I don't imagine Melissa and everybody else would want to work. But I'll volunteer Ty. Ty said he's available.
He's been out for 3 weeks by the end, right? Yeah.
I'm open to the 5th or 6th that week.
No, we-
I'm likely unavailable the rest of the week.
The 5th and 6th, you're unavailable?
Likely, yeah.
Okay.
Will you be here the 11th?
Yes. The workshop day.
Yeah. 'Cause I don't know. Do we do 2 meetings in that week?
We have done those before. We've
I
combined
don't want to
them.
do 2 meetings on the same night.
Okay.
I have a feeling that given past budget meetings that I will be very tired when it's over.
You probably will. Okay. So, yeah, we could do 11th, 12th, or 13th. I have 13th is, well, Planning Commission is in here on the 13th, so that might be a problem of July. But 11th and 12th, you could do a meeting back to back on those 2 days if you wanted. One council, one workshop.
Well, I would keep the workshop on the 11th, but I think I'd like to have the council a different day, either the 10th or the 12th.
I know we've kicked this down the road about as far as we can, but is there a way we could wait and see how full the agenda is that we could have it?
There are some reporting things that need to be addressed
Okay.
now,
Okay.
within the next week or so. I
Okay.
don't think we can wait till next city council meeting to do those things. That's the issue. Okay.
I know at one time we talked about moving it to the fourth week. Was there a conflict, or were we going to revisit that? Like if we wanted to move
Move it back to the 27th of June?
move it to the 25th. So we're still in July, right? We're talking about July.
Oh,
Moving the first meeting to the fourth week. So essentially we'd have back-to-back weeks with meetings the 18th and 25th. I'll be gone the week of the 18th, so I will miss that meeting. I'll be on vacation, but I couldn't remember if we had talked about shifting everything.
I'm out the 18th as well, and I just didn't want to miss the budget discussion. So that was my
the
one
18th
request.
is a regular city council meeting. So
Right.
if we got two of you going to be gone, that makes quorum at risk. It doesn't make it not
Right.
a quorum, but it makes it at risk. So anyway, so we just need to know that.
Is there a consensus? Because I mean, the mayor controls the agenda, and we can do a light agenda on the 11th and just do a city council meeting on the 11th and workshop proceeding. That seems to be what we've done in the past. If that clears up, and then the 20th of July, I have to have the last day to notify the county clerk to intend to be above the revenue neutral rate. That's the only hard deadline I know of in July. If we want to plan maybe on the 11th to have a double up, and then we can, I mean, if we hadn't necessarily have to have one, we can address it on the 20th, but of June, meaning I'll let you know. I know we want to notify as many people as we can that we're moving the date, but.
So you're suggesting make a regular city council meeting on the 11th and have a light agenda?
And then a workshop after budget, because
Workshop after.
if you remember, we're doing general fund, heavy lifting in June, and then all our utilities and minor funds in July, and then so we'll still have the August workshop to work budget. So if you say I had enough, let's go home, then we still have another workshop to work the budget if that's the case.
Your July notice to the county on exceeding the revenue neutral rate, do you have to tell them by how much or just that you're exceeding?
Just exceeding, yeah. You
Which
know
we-
that law.
which
It's
we
great.
will.
That law is great. Yeah.
Yeah. So we don't have to worry about that. That's really not, that's just a perfection.
No, they're gonna get us for they're gonna get us for everything we have. So yeah, it doesn't matter
Okay.
what date.
Well, okay, let's do it on the 11th, but let's make it rule, whatever you want to call it, that we only bring items to the council meeting on the 11th that have to be addressed.
So
no prayer, no flag of allegiance,
well,
somebody's driveway, nothing like that.
I don't want to
It's gotta-
offend God. Let's keep that, and then we'll make sure there's a lot of consent
But we've had
agenda
other
items.
special meetings where we just go straight into the,
Yeah.
if we have to approve the, whatever the money spending, then we can do that. Like you said, consent items, but,
Just do an abbreviated meet. Make sure it's an
make it as
abbreviated
short
for
as possible.
We
brief
can do that.
City council.
We can do that.
Are we going to consider it a regular meeting or a special meeting?
It'll be a regular meeting. We'll just move the meeting from the 4th to the 11th. Okay. And possibly do an abbreviated workshop afterwards. Okay. That work? So 7:00 on the 11th?
Works for me.
For the city council meeting and abbreviated workshop.
Abbreviated
after-
workshop.
Our
following.
workshop would be at 6:30 on the 11th.
Well, we'll just move it to after the city council meeting.
Okay.
That would be better.
I'm fine with that.
Council at 6:30.
I would say that would be more than the normal course of action, but 6:30 council meeting and then proceeding workshop.
Okay, I'm fine with that as well. If you want to do that. Okay, 6:30 city council meeting. Followed by workshop.
And Melissa I believe she asked if someone could make a motion to move just for the.
So you have a formal motion. Yeah, we
A
need to
formal motion.
make a formal motion, but that's what we're going to do. Okay? So if somebody will do that, that would be.
I'll make a motion to move the July 4th regular city council meeting to July 11th at 6:30 PM.
Second.
Who was second? Was that Mr. David?
David.
Okay, thank you. And any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. So July 4th will be moved to July 11th at 6:30. Okay. The non-discussion item on the agenda, adjournment.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Welch, second by Mr. Smith. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. We are adjourned.